The President of Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, issues tough guidelines on land evictions. That and more stories in Aboli today. Thanks so much for joining us and Doris being part of us. This is Africa Today. My name is Nahaba Gajura, but first are the headlines. Police warns against reckless use of roads as 89 die in accidents in 1 week. The number of COVID-19 deaths reached the grim milestone of 6 million. In our sports today, SC Villa clear Super Eagles hurdle to book date with Rivals Express. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We start with one of our top stories. The General Court Martial in Machinde has granted bail to Senior Superintendent of Police Nixon Agasire, the former Commander of Police Special Operations, having spent 4 years on remand.
Agasire, a close associate of former Police Chief General Kale Kaihura, was arrested by the army in 2018 and detained at Machinde Barracks. He has on several occasions made attempts to have him released on bail, but all were futile until Monday, when the Army Court finally allowed him to have temporary release. The Army Court chairman issued several stringent bail terms that he said ought to be met by Agasire, or else he risks having his bail cancelled. He was told not to go beyond the limits of Kampala and Wakiso districts, to report to court twice a month after every 2 weeks, to pay a non-cash bond of 30 million shillings, and each of his sureties pay a non-cash bond of 50 million shillings. Prosecution alleges that on 25th October 2013 at Kamingo in PG district along Masaka Road, the accused using a pistol and grenades abducted Lieutenant Joel Mtabazi and Jackson Kalemera, whom they took back to Rwanda without their knowledge, contrary to the Penal Code Act. In the bail application, Agasire told the Army Court that it is his right to apply for bail and that he had spent a long time on remand and hence the need to be released temporarily.
Moving on in our top stories, the President of Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, has issued tough guidelines in which he banned all land evictions all over the country that are carried out without the consent of the respective district security committees. We have the details.
In a February 28, 2022 letter to the Prime Minister Robin Anabanja, Museveni used his powers under Article 98(1) and 99(1) of the Constitution that enjoins him to ensure good governance and protect the Constitution, to stop any evictions that are not given green light by the DSCs. The President, however, warned that if an illegal eviction happens, the members of the District Security Committee will all be held responsible and action will be taken against them. He, however, excluded the UPDF representatives, who he said may not be in the know of the substance of the issues involved. In the same communication, the President requested the Chief Justice to prevail upon the justices and magistrates who violate the Constitution by illegally evicting people in collusion with land grabbers. The President further directed the Minister of Lands to inform the Attorney General about such abuses by judicial officers so that legal action can be taken against them.
Moving on, police has cautioned all road users to be extra careful while using the roads as accident cases continue to rise. More details in this report. This follows a report where police released on Monday indicating that 89 people lost their lives in accidents in 1 week between February 28th and March 5th, 2022. In the same week, a total of 414 accidents occurred, of which 75 were fatal, 226 serious, while 113 were minor. During this period, there were 404 accident victims, and out of those 89 people died, while 315 sustained injuries. According to the Directorate of Traffic and Road Safety, ASP Farida Nampima, the region of Kampala North registered the highest number of deaths due to accidents, totaling to 9, while 41 were totaling to 9. Mbara registered 8 deaths, Mitiana Highway 7 deaths, Greater Bushenyi registered 6 deaths, Lugazi, Soroti, Tororo, and Kampala Metropolitan East all registered 5 deaths, among others. Nampima appealed to all road users to use the roads well with due care in order to curb the rising accidents in the country. Well, thank you so much, our reporter. Africa Today takes a quick break. We shall come back with the international news. Welcome back from the break. You're still watching TV Africa, the right to know. In international news today, Monday's rally was the latest in the string of protests over the military takeover, which removed the civilian-led transitional government. We have the details.
Hundreds of protesters took to the streets of Sudan's capital Khartoum on Monday. As they denounced the military coup of last October, security forces fired tear gas canisters towards them. Monday's rally was the latest in a string of protests over the military power grab which removed the civilian-led transitional government. Since then, a political way out of the crisis has not been found. Negotiations under the aegis of UN envoy have remained unsuccessful. The ruling generals vow to hand over power to an elected government, promising elections next year. But young protesters call for an immediate return of civilian rule. Despite a heavy security crackdown and an apparent lack of progress, demonstrators continue to rally in a country which had taken a winding path to democracy in April 2019 after a popular uprising forced the military to remove long-time leader Omar al-Bashir.
Away from that, the Geneva-based Human Rights Council gathered on Monday as the 49th regular session continued, and the UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet updated the council on the situation in Ethiopia. We have the details.
In the war-torn Tigray region, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights said the context had deteriorated in the past few months. Michelle Bachelet said that she was alarmed by the growing humanitarian crisis, where hostilities and insecurity continue to block the delivery of humanitarian supplies into Tigray by the Semera-Abala-Mekelle road, which has not been accessible since 15 December 2021. Since the conflict broke out in 2020, it inexorably expanded in the Tigray, Afar and Amhara regions. The Office of the UN Commissioner received reports of wide-scale human rights violations and recorded cases of gang rapes, deaths in airstrike attacks, and severe damage to health facilities. If the Ethiopian parliament lifted wartime state of emergency last month, efforts continue in order to reach a ceasefire. In the meantime, an estimated 4 out of every 5 people in the Tigray region were food insecure, while half of pregnant and breastfeeding women were malnourished, according to the World Food Programme.
Thank you so much, our reporter. Moving on, in our international news, Tunisia's President Kais Saied inaugurated a temporary council of judges on Monday, which replaces an independent watchdog that he abolished in early February. Now, the ceremony took place at the presidential palace in Tunis. 9 of the 21 members of the new judiciary watchdog were directly appointed by the head of state in replacement of the magistrates of the High Judicial Council sacked last month, while the others served by virtue of their existing positions from which the president now has the power to sack them. Saied had for a long time accused judges of the former council of corruption and of blocking inquiries. In 2/3 majority of the magistrates who made up this council were nominated by the parliament, a process dominated at the time of the Ennahda, the Islamist-inspired party. This majority had kept alive suspicions that it was corrupt during that Saied called historic moment. The move comes nearly 4 weeks after the president issued a decree establishing the new body. It had prompted demonstrations in various parts of the country. Rights groups criticized what they called a political purge of the judiciary, when some Tunisians were pleased. On the international scene, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet had asked the president to restore the High Judicial Council. President Saied dismissed the government and froze parliament last July, although the civil society still waits for a full return of constitutionality. Moving on, Burkina Faso's 25-member government met on Monday for their first-time cabinet meeting a few days after their appointment. Now, Burkina Faso strongman Paul-Henri Damiba named a 25-member government to lead the West African country during a 3-year transition following January's coup. More details in this report. Prime Minister Albert Ouedraogo, who was appointed on Thursday, formed a 25-member government on Saturday, including 6 women, to lead the country for the 3 years before they return to constitutional order. The new transitional government in Burkina Faso pledged to work selflessly to relieve the suffering of people affected by jihadist violence that has plagued the country for the past 7 years. General Barthélemy Simpore retains the job of defense minister that he held under Roch Marc Christian Kabore, who was ousted after troops mutinied over his strategy against jihadists. Simpore has even been elevated to the rank of Minister of State, according to the Damiba decree published late on Saturday. 6 women have been appointed to the cabinet, including Olivia Romba, who will serve as foreign minister. Yero Boli, who was a minister in various governments under previous president Blaise Compaoré, was named Minister of State to the president and tasked with national reconciliation. Civil society and union leaders such as Lionel Bilgo and Basalma Bazi have also been appointed ministers, the former to handle national education and literacy. In addition to the 25-member cabinet, a 71-member legislature is being set up to ensure the transition. In a business news today, Libya's national oil company announced on Sunday the suspension of oil production from 2 major fields due to interruption from armed groups.
According to a statement released on social media, production was interrupted after an armed group shut down the valves delivering the crude. The statement added that the closure is causing losses of 330,000 barrels per day and a daily loss of around 32 million euros. Since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi's regime in 2011, Libya has been involved in more than a decade of civil unrest. A parallel government sworn in by Libya's parliament and seeking to oust the ruling executive in Tripoli was sworn in last Thursday, further aggravating the institutional crisis in the country. According to the NOC, the armed group led by a certain Mohamed Al-Gaj had already closed the valves several times between 2014 and 2016.
In our health news today, the official death toll from COVID-19 reached the 6 million mark on Sunday, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. South Africa in particular has been hit hard, counting over 3.5 million infections and just over 99,500 deaths since the start of the outbreak. Here are the details. According to the bereaved South African mother, Thoko Dube, her family is coping and have accepted it because it's been happening to their families, adding that the only thing that was scared was that there may be some of the family members that might be contaminated. Official numbers suggest that South Africa has now administered over 31 vaccine doses. It means nearly 50% of the adult population is fully vaccinated. Most restrictions to prevent the spread of the virus have been lifted. For some people, such as recently vaccinated Omar Hussein, this might represent a problem. Omar Hussein said that people have become complacent as people are now walking around with no masks and hope that the government may somehow phase out walking around without a mask for those who are vaccinated. Wearing masks remains mandatory in South Africa, and there is still restrictions on the number of people allowed to attend public gatherings. In our sports news today, Sports Club Villa will square up traditional rivals Express during the 48th Stanbic Uganda Cup round of 32 stage. Now the midfield trio of Nicholas Kabonge, Ibrahim Saddam, Juma and Amil Kakomo scored for Uganda's most successful football entity on the sunny day. The development comes after the Jogos made easy work of Northern Regional League side Super Eagles with a 3-0 victory in the rescheduled round of 64 tie at Pace War Memorial Stadium in Gulu City. Kabonge put the visitors ahead of the stroke of half-time to boast the opening stanza 1-0. Saddam doubled the scores with a well-drilled penalty on the hour mark after Benson Mohindo had been brought down in the forbidden area. Kakomo kept the icing on the Jaguars' already baked cake with a third goal in the closing minutes of the game. SC Villa marches forward and will face sworn rivals Express at the Betway Mutesa 2 Wankulukuku Stadium on the date yet to be confirmed by the FUFA Competitions Department. Well, thank you so much for being our loyal audience from where we started from. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We shall keep updating you. It is TV Africa, the right to know.